Tonight, dismissed. An attempted murder charge against a Dawson Creek man is dropped. Earthquake. A 4.4 magnitude quake strikes the Peace region. And be ready to leave. An evacuation alert issued for the Kiskatna River wildfire. Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with a Dawson Creek man having his attempted murder charge dismissed. Jesse Ray Stevens is well known to police. He was charged with attempted murder and break and enter. Stevens was set to go to trial. However, a witness did not show up for court, causing the charges to be dismissed. Charges were approved after police alleged a house on 6th Street and 97th Avenue was broken into in November of 2023. Well, Stevens was released from custody by a judge after those charges were laid. Part of the conditions of his release was to wear an ankle monitoring bracelet. After his charges were dismissed, all his court-imposed conditions, including having to wear an ankle monitor, were dropped. In December of 2023, Dawson Creek RCMP asking for the public's help in finding Stevens. At the time, police warning the public to not confront Stevens as he was considered to be dangerous. A veterinarian in Fort St. John may soon learn whether he will have to register as a sexual offender. Fort St. John RCMP announced the charges against Justin School in 2022. He pled guilty to 1 count of sexual assault and 2 counts of voyeurism in November of that same year. The Judge David Simpkins sentenced Sewell to house arrest for 2 years less a day in connection to the 2007 sexual assault in Charlie Lake. As part of his sentence, Sewell must provide a DNA sample. The judge didn't manage to rule whether Sewell must register as a sex offender. That matter is back in court Thursday to pick a new date. The judge saying he needed time to render a decision. The Crown is appealing Sewell's sentence on July 14th. The appeal hearing will take place. An earthquake struck the Peace region early this morning. The 4.4 magnitude quake struck 73 kilometers northwest of Fort St. John near Wanawan. It happened just before 11:30 this morning in an area that has a number of oil and gas operations. The quake happened 10 kilometers below ground and could be felt in Dawson Creek. No damage has been reported, but the BC Energy Regulator says a well pad in the area completed operations on June the 5th. The regulator adding the well is linked to the seismic event as their investigation continues. Well, the Kiskatna River wildfire continues to burn out of control on both sides of the BC-Alberta border. And late this afternoon, the Peace River Regional District issuing yet another evacuation alert. The alert covers the area from the junction of Highway 2 and 52 to the Alberta border. The fire is 21,679 hectares in size. Firefighters catching a break in the weather Tuesday. Light winds and rising humidity allowing crews to carry out some planned ignitions in an effort to secure the west flank of the fire. But today, conditions taking another turn. Northeasterly winds picking up with wind gusts of up to 35 kilometers per hour this evening. Fire activity expected to increase on the west side of the fire near Highway 52. There's still a threat to the community. BC Wildfire Service asking residents who are under evacuation orders not to go back to their homes at this point. And rotating opening and closures of the Alaska Highway continues. The highway west of Fort Nelson is closed between the Highway 77 junction and Toad River. It was open last night until 6 this morning before being closed again. The Summit Lake wildfire is burning nearby. The fire is just over 81,000 hectares in size. Now the highway near the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire is opening this evening. The blaze has grown to just over 156,000 hectares, making it the largest wildfire in BC right now. Motorists are being asked to drive to conditions, obey traffic control crews, and monitor Drive BC for the latest highway closures. And more good news tonight concerning the Sundance Lake wildfire. The Peace River Regional District rescinding the evacuation alert for the fire burning just east of Chetwynd. On Monday, the BC Wildfire Service saying the fire near Highway 97 was being held. Today, the blaze is being listed as under control. It had grown to 60 hectares in size and is 13 kilometers from Chetwynd. It was discovered last Wednesday night and is thought to be human-caused. The PRD urging the public to check their websites for any changes. An evacuation alert could be reissued if wildfire situation changes. And north of Vancouver, residents in the town of Squamish are on high alert tonight as the wildfire there rages close to homes.
Never ever seen anything like this before, especially how close it was to us, right here.
An out-of-control fire near the mountains has triggered a local state of emergency. Officials in Squamish say it started yesterday afternoon in a hiking area, but it's not clear how it ignited. Researchers from Environment and Climate Change Canada say wildfires are likely to get worse over the next 3 months due to forecasted dry conditions and warmer than normal temperatures, especially in western provinces. Well, to Victoria now, where the opposition is calling on the NDP government to crack down on fentanyl trafficking and organized crime. It comes after the head of the FBI called Vancouver a central hub in the global fentanyl trafficking trade. And a mayor in the Lower Mainland says concerns from the Americans were raised 2 years ago under the Biden administration. CTV's Ben Nesbitt has the story.
Last year, a staggering 95 million doses of fentanyl were seized from this property in northern Okanagan. The RCMP called it the largest and most sophisticated drug lab in the country. Even the U.S. DEA flagged it in its 2025 National Drug Threat Assessment.
Our own Canadian intelligence service reports indicate that there has been a rise in the number of organizations that are producing fentanyl and synthetic opioids, particularly in Ontario and British Columbia.
Public safety critic Eleanor Sturko says the BC NDP government continues to downplay concerns from U.S. officials as trade war rhetoric. Sturko highlights comments made by the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, on the Joe Rogan podcast last week.
But instead of going right up the southern border and into America, you know what they're doing? They're flying it into Vancouver. They're taking the precursors up to Canada, manufacturing it up there, and doing their global distribution routes from up there because we were being so effective down south.
In response to Patel's comments, BC Public Safety Minister Gary Begg said less than 1% of the fentanyl in the U.S. comes from here, and that it was just another attempt to justify President Trump's tariffs. But the mayor of Port Coquitlam disagrees.
We have been, an easy place to do business.
In 2023, West received a letter from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken after they met at a conference in Colorado. He confirmed that U.S. officials view BC and Canada as a hotspot for drug trafficking and organized crime.
In the United States, they have a RICO law, and they have used RICO laws and racketeering charges to go after a lot of the transnational criminal organizations, and no such law exists in Canada.
The federal government has appointed a fentanyl czar, but Sturko is calling on the BC NDP to create a task force to address fentanyl trafficking, transnational crime, and drug production in BC.
We need a government that is first and foremost going to come out strong on these issues, acknowledging that they exist as dangers to our province, and then coming up with a real plan.
Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Vancouver.
A 44-year-old American man will spend the next 40 years in prison after a BC family came forward to police, sparking an international child luring investigation. In April of 2020, parents of a 12-year-old in Saanich on Vancouver Island reported to local police they had discovered sexually explicit messages on the young girl's phone. They were sent to her by an unknown individual. Evidence from the initial investigation revealed the suspect's location was in the United States. In July of 2022, Homeland Security arrested 44-year-old Mark Wallen in Los Angeles. Investigators determined he had been preying on young girls and boys and was grooming them to provide him with explicit videos and photos. Last month, Wallen was sentenced to 40 years in American federal prison. Well, the Crown has begun closing arguments in the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players, and the men have all pled not guilty. Earlier today, lawyers for the players made their closing submissions. CTV's Heather Wright has more from the courthouse in London, Ontario.
The judge has now heard from all 5 defense attorneys who separately outline why their respective clients should be acquitted. Today, Lisa Carnelos, Dylan Dubé's attorney, told the judge the Crown has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the events that took place in June 2018 amounted to sexual assault. It's an argument also made this morning by Cal Foot's lawyer. Foot is accused of doing the splits over the complainant's face while naked. Juliana Greenspan says her client did the splits over the complainant's torso and was fully clothed in shorts and a t-shirt and never touched her. This was in a playful manner. This was a playful trick, and EM was in on it, she said. Greenspan told the judge that EM never told police in her first interview that the man who did the splits didn't have pants on. During her testimony, EM said she clearly remembered him not having pants on and that it wouldn't have been shocking to her otherwise. Greenspan argues this discrepancy calls into question EM's credibility. The complainant has changed her evidence in a material way in a focused attempt to falsely sexualize that interaction. This is a case that hinges on consent. The defense has argued the complainant was a willing and active participant in the sexual activity that took place. The Crown began her closing submissions by saying the opposite. She did not choose. She did not make a voluntary choice to engage in those sexual acts. Therefore, she did not consent. The Crown also told the judge the accused constructed a narrative to investigators in an effort to make them look good and the complainant look bad. The Crown will continue her closing submissions tomorrow and says she will revisit the group chat sent before and after the incident, as she says they challenged the credibility of the 5 accused. Heather Wright, CTV News, London, Ontario.
CTV News has confirmed Canada and the U.S. talks on reaching an economic and security deal have ramped up in recent weeks.
It's a very dynamic situation. You know, we've been engaging with our friends in the United States. You know, we talked to different people in the administration. I had the U.S. ambassador yesterday, I think, which came to see me.
The framework for a deal has been trading hands between officials in both camps. Sources who spoke to CTV News on the condition of anonymity cautioned finalizing such a deal requires U.S. President Donald Trump to sign off on it. There are no explicit assurances that will happen on a certain timeline. Harvey Weinstein has been found guilty on a sex charge in a retrial after he appealed his 2020 conviction. The retrial began in April in Manhattan. A jury today found the 73-year-old guilty on one of 3 charges for assaulting a former production assistant in 2006. He'd been found guilty on the same charge in 2020 before the appeal. The Oscar-winning producer was found not guilty on a second charge. It stemmed from an alleged 2002 assault of a 16-year-old aspiring actress. Now, the jury has not yet reached a verdict on a third count of rape. He was also previously found guilty on that charge. Jury deliberations are expected to resume on Thursday. Well, Brian Wilson, the lead singer of the Beach Boys and the man who crafted some of the most influential hits in pop history, has died. Wilson's musical brilliance also led him down a dark path into a well-documented personal struggles. Here's CTV's Andrew Johnson on the death of an icon.
Here are the Beach Boys.
Their Southern California sound defined a generation.
Round, round, get around.
The man behind it, Brian Wilson. He co-founded the group in the early 1960s with his brothers, their cousin, and a friend.
I wish they all...
Wilson, the leader and songwriter, has been described as a visionary, a musical genius, serving up unforgettable harmonies and arrangements that peaked on the legendary album Pet Sounds. But Wilson also struggled. For decades, he dealt with mental illness and drug abuse, spending much of the 1970s a recluse.
I was confined in my bedroom. I was able to get a hold of all these drugs, and they messed me up. They messed my mind up.
A period also chronicled in a famous tribute from the Bare Naked Ladies.
Lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did.
In later years, Wilson released a number of solo albums and reunited with the Beach Boys for a successful 50th anniversary tour. In 2024, it was revealed he was diagnosed with dementia. Today, his family posted this picture of Brian Wilson announcing his death, saying they are heartbroken and at a loss for words.
God only knows what I'd be without you.
Brian Wilson was 82. Andrew Johnson, CTV News.
All right, please do stay tuned. I'll be right back with weather and some good news, some rain in the forecast. That coming up after the break.